What's up, guys? Welcome to your 8th Android tutorial with me, Travis, for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically use some of those IDs that we set up in XML and get them into Java and set up some variables pretty much. But the first thing I want you guys to realize is in XML, basically all of these things are considered as views. That's why we saw this text was called text view. Button even is from the view class. Basically all these things are from the view class. You can pretty much think of it like that, and they all are pretty much considered views. Now that'll make sense when we get into Java. So let's open up our starting point Java class within our package under our source folder. And if you guys have no programming background, that's pretty much fine. We'll get into the Java as we go, but the first thing I want you guys to do is go right below this line. And like I said, I'm not right now I'm not going to explain too much about what this is and how Java works, but basically what this is this is our class, and the ending bracket is right here, and within our class we have a method called onCreate. So that's all you guys need to know for right now. Don't look into it too much. For the most part, you see the public, the class, you're like, whoa, what's going on? Void, but don't worry about it. What we're going to set up is just basically some variables. So the first variable we're going to set up is going to be an integer. It's going to be our counter item, basically a number, and we're going to keep track of our total. So basically when you're programming, that is called an integer. An integer is a whole number, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, a -1, such as that. And to define your variable, basically you tell you give it a type, what type you want, which would be an integer, and then you give it a name. So what we're going to do is type int, which stands for integer, again as for a number, and we're going to call this integer counter. That's just the variable, that's the name that we're giving the variable. We aren't setting it equal to anything, but we're just setting up our variables. Now we're going to define a button as well, because we have two buttons, an add button and a subtract button, and so we're going to say button add. And again, I hope you guys noticed that I put a semicolon after both of these lines. That's kind of standard in Java. After each line you want to put a semicolon. And we're getting an error for a button. So basically what I want you guys to do is hover over the button, and you can see we need to import the button, which basically is a class from the Android.widget packet. Again, under this 2.2 there's a package called Android.widget. So that's where the button's located, and so we can use some of the methods. We need to import it. The import comes up here, right here, Android.widget.button. So now we can use the methods from the button class. So there we go. We set up a button variable. Again, it doesn't mean anything. We just set up this variable called add, which is a button. Now we can set up another button called subtract down here as well. But when you want to define more than one button, you can also just hit a comma sub for subtract, or for a second button. So now we have two button variables, an add button and a subtract button. Again, they don't mean anything. And the last thing we need to do is set up our text view. So we're going to say text view, and we're going to call this one display. And again, you guys can name these whatever you want. This is just the names that I'm using. But we do have to use this type, which is the text view. Again, we have to import it so we can use some of the methods from the text view class. So we have our variables set up, and now we want to connect them to the XML. So what we're going to do is go within this onCreate bracket below the set content view, and again that will be this bracket right here. So that way we know we're within our onCreate method, and we're going to set our counter equal to 0 starting out with. So it's pretty simple, just counter equals 0 and then semicolon, and now that set up our variable counter to 0, and again this variable is an integer, and our program's going to know that now that we're working with a number for the most part. And now we also need to set up what our add button is equal to, and to do this it might be kind of confusing jumping right into setting up references right away, but don't make it confusing, and we'll get into this in more detail later. But just within parentheses put button, basically meaning that we're going to use this as a button, and we're going to say find view by ID, just like that. Find view is capitalized, by is capitalized, and ID is I is capitalized. So basically, we're finding the view by the ID, and again, all those things are views. The button's a view, text view is a view, and we're going to find that view by the ID of that view. So we're going to put within parentheses r dot ID dot, and then we have our IDs that we set up in the XML in the last tutorial. Since we're setting up our add button in Java, we're going to say button add, and then we just have to hit a semicolon at the end of this, and we basically set up our ID. Now to set up again, or we basically set up the connection between XML and Java. So it's pretty simple for the most part. We're also going to do sub equals pretty much the same thing, just for repetition's sake, but find view by ID, and we're going to use a different ID because we need to reference the ID of the sub button. So that's going to be button sub, and then just a semicolon, and we also need to set up our text view. So we're going to say, whoops, display, which is again a text view type variable. We're going to set that equal to, within parentheses, text view, and find view by ID. You guys will get pretty familiar with the find view by ID method, but as for now, I know I'm going fast and I'm not really explaining too much, but hopefully you guys kind of pick up on something. Again, we'll go back over some of this stuff so it's a lot clearer, or a lot more clear I should say, but basically now we set up what our variables are equal to in XML, so when the person touches one of those buttons, we know that it was touched for the most part. So thanks again for watching, guys. I know we went through this quickly and I didn't really explain any of the Java, or even what these, why it's in parentheses like this, or what this method is, but hopefully you guys picked up something, and trust me, you'll understand everything as you go throughout the series. Have a good one, guys.